You're aware of the purchasing chessboard. You know how to map a category in the purchasing chessboard, analyzing your demand power and the supply power of your suppliers. With this analysis, you land on the right square of the purchasing chessboard and you know how to select the right method and how to apply it. And if you know all of this, you probably achieve pretty solid savings. But did you know that your company has a center of gravity in the purchasing chessboard? And that the center of gravity tells you what skill profile you need in your procurement organization? In this video, I will show you an application of the purchasing chessboard you've probably never thought about. Let's get started. Here's the purchasing chessboard. If this is the first time you hear about it, here's a quick intro. The purchasing chessboard does not only offer you 64 differentiated methods to reduce cost for a category or subcategory, it also gives you a clear guidance which of these 64 methods to pick in any given situation. Picking the right method is done by analyzing your demand power, or in other words, how important are you for your suppliers, and by analyzing the supply power of your suppliers, or in other words, how important are your suppliers for you. Should you want to know more about the purchasing chessboard, there's a book that has sold more than 100,000 copies so far, and there also is a playlist on my channel. If you map all the categories of a company in the purchasing chessboard, you get a picture that looks like this. I like to call it the fingerprint of a company. What you see here is what the fingerprint of a maker of yellow machines looks like. Yellow machines are bulldozers, excavators, cranes and similar construction equipment. The fingerprint tells us that the maker of yellow machines buys many diverse categories. And as is typical for a company in the discrete manufacturing industry, the categories are mostly in the upper half of the purchasing chessboard and in the lower left quadrant. Let's take a closer look at some of the more dominant categories. In the lower left quadrant we have steel structures. The steel structures make up the body of the yellow machines. Typically they are large, bulky and made of high-strength steel. While not every supplier of steel fabrications has the right skill set for making these steel structures, there are plenty of qualified suppliers, which means low supply power. At the same time, the maker of yellow machines is one of the biggest players in the industry. Hence, the maker of yellow machines enjoys a pretty high supply power. The right methods are somewhere in between best shoring and cost regression analysis. Since labor costs are significant in the cutting, welding and assembly processes, suppliers located in low labor cost countries will have an advantage as long as transport costs remain reasonable. And the target cost will be determined using factor cost data and statistical methods. The second dominant category is hydraulics. Most of the motions of yellow machines are enabled by hydraulics. Here, the maker of yellow machines still enjoys pretty high demand power, but there are only very few qualified suppliers, and the most important one is probably Bosch Rexroth, which means really high supply power. Bothering Bosch Rexroth with best shoring and cost regression analysis won't get us anywhere. What feels more appropriate is aligning our innovation roadmap with that of Bosch Rexroth. And the right methods would be around project-based partnerships with Bosch Rexroth and incentivizing them with revenue sharing and profit sharing agreements. If we move on to diesel engines, we are still dealing with suppliers who enjoy high demand power. While there are several makers of diesel engines, operators of yellow machines will prefer to have engines from qualified and established suppliers like Cummins. The operators have the spare parts for Cummins engines and they know how to repair them. Unfortunately, the comparatively few engines our maker of yellow machines buys annually translates into pretty low supply power. Design for sourcing appears to be the most suitable method, and it can be interpreted as buying an off-the-shelf engine without any yellow machine-specific peripherals and trim, and doing most of the customization in-house. Looking at the overall category footprint of the maker of yellow machines, we see a center of gravity slightly toward the right of the middle of the chessboard. This means that we need to build a procurement team that is really strong in methods where we enjoy above average demand power. The picture is a bit different if we move on to an EPC, an engineering, procurement and construction firm. These are companies that build large installations like steel plants and refineries. Similar to the maker of yellow machines, an EPC buys diverse categories. But as a rule of thumb, the majority of these categories are in the upper half of the chessboard. The reason for this is that a lot is bought from quite specialized subcontractors without much competition. The result is a center of gravity higher than the middle of the chessboard. This means that we need to build a procurement team that is really strong in methods where suppliers enjoy above average supply power. Let's move on to a supplier of automotive and interior components. Think of a supplier specializing on plastic injection molding. Resins account for 60 or 70% of the direct material spend of that automotive supplier. The resin prices are very much dictated by indices. Intelligent deal structure is a method that can help mitigate some of this extreme exposure to a certain degree. But we have a center of gravity clearly toward the left and higher than the middle of the purchasing chessboard. This means we need to build a procurement team that is really strong in methods where we are facing comparatively low demand power and are dealing with suppliers enjoying high supply power. Some chemical companies have even more extreme footprints and centers of gravities that are pushed even further left and up. And the capabilities of their procurement teams will need to be even more pronounced. I think there are a couple of key takeaways from this discussion. We probably all agree that it is important that you know how to navigate the purchasing chessboard and how to map a category based on an analysis of demand power and supply power. But it is probably not required to master all 64 methods. At the category level, it should be sufficient to master the methods in the vicinity of your category really well. For the maker of yellow machines, the position of engines is unlikely to fluctuate that much. The annual demand will be in the thousands. The maker of engines is making hundreds of thousands of engines, so this will remain in the upper left quadrant. On the company level, the advice is a bit different. You need to know the fingerprint of your company in the purchasing chessboard. And you need to know the center of gravity. You probably still need to master all 64 methods, but you need to build strong centers of competence for the key methods that will dominate the procurement of your company for the foreseeable future. Okay, now it is your turn. In the comments down below, let me know where you see the center of gravity in your company and how this influences the build-up of competencies. Should you have a question, I will get back to you within 24 hours and I may even respond with a dedicated video. Thank you for watching and I see you in the next one. Bye!